Hello, everyone. Tonight we are walking across the frozen floor of a world long gone, listening to the hush of snowflakes falling on Bone's wind, whistling through broken trees, and something else, something heavier, something walking on two legs. You freeze. It's not a man. It's not quite a bear either. You stare down at the mud. Well, it's frozen, now glacially laminated, but here they are tracks. Broad heel pads, long toes. Not claws, though. Those definitely existed. These prints don't belong to a creature shuffling on all fours. They stride. Heel to toe. Left, right, the way you walk. And they go on for hundreds of meters, curving around a shallow hill and disappearing into a tangle of pine. If you squint just right, they almost look human. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. The air around you smells of moss and mammoth dung. There's no getting around it. This is Ice Age North America, and you've just arrived a few thousand years too early for Wi-Fi. If it weren't for the towering snowdrifts and the wandering camels, yes, camels, you might think you were still on Earth. But here, Earth comes with some creative additions. And that thing making those tracks, you won't find it in a modern zoo. Arctodus simus. The giant short-faced bear, extinct. Allegedly. But it doesn't feel that way right now, not when you're crouched over footprints that look like something out of an evolutionary fever dream. They're too big to be human, and the spacing's too wide to match any modern bear. Whatever made these prints was not just walking, it was striding. Upright, purposeful, casual even, like it knew it had the right of way. And in truth, it probably did. This bear wasn't just big, it was terrifyingly optimized. Picture a grizzly. Then stretch it taller, leaner, and meaner. Its legs were so long they looked out of place on a bear. If a linebacker decided to cosplay as a monster truck, you'd be getting close. You follow the prints deeper into the forest. The trees here aren't quite the same as the ones you know. They're darker, shorter, more desperate, trying to suck what little light the Ice Age sun provides. And though everything feels still, it also feels watched. Like maybe whatever made these prints isn't as extinct as they say. Don't worry, you probably won't survive. One thing's clear, this bear didn't walk like other bears. It could rear up and stay there, lumbering across long distances in a posture eerily similar to a person's. Scientists have argued for decades over whether Arctodus regularly moved this way, or if its human-like stride was just an illusion created by its bizarre leg proportions. Historians still debate whether the upright walking was frequent behavior or just a trick of fossil imagination. But what's certain is this ancient humans noticed. Stories linger in the oldest oral traditions, tales of giant figures moving through the snow, too hairy to be men, too upright to be beasts. You think Bigfoot came out of nowhere? Please, some stories just don't die. They evolve. One odd thing, this bear had a taste for solitude. Unlike pack predators or social omnivores, the short-faced bear seemed to prefer the loner lifestyle. It roamed huge territories, leaving tracks like these all across ancient Alaska, the Yukon, and even down into what's now the U.S. Midwest. It was a one-bear roadshow, and you're part of the audience. Lucky you. You cross a frozen river cracked like old glass and find a place where the tracks double back. The bear paused here. Maybe to drink, maybe to listen, maybe to stare at its own reflection and think, huh? I really do look kind of human. Or maybe not. But one thing's clear, it wasn't just moving through the world, it was dominating it. The science gets stranger when you consider its gait. Because of its long legs and stiff spine, some paleontologists believe it was adapted for speed on flat ground. Think about that, a bear, an upright bear, moving at 40 to 50 km/h across open terrain. Good luck running. Even on your best day, you're toast. And since toast hadn't been invented yet, you'd probably just end up being lunch. Oh, and here's something weird. At least one Arctodus fossil was found near a saber-toothed cat skeleton. Not next to it, on top of it. Which raises questions. Did the bear steal its kill? Kill it outright? Trip and fall on it? Who knows? But the message is clear. Arctodus wasn't afraid of company, especially if that company was dinner. You kneel by the last track and touch the ancient soil. It's firm, cold, full of memory, the kind of memory that clings to things. There's something unsettling about how human the print feels like a version of yourself that never learned to wear pants. The bear's foot, though huge, has a vaguely plantigrade shape, meaning it walked with the heel touching the ground like you do. Not like a dog, not like a cat, but like a biped who occasionally forgets his manners. Somewhere far away, a wolf howls. But it's not the apex predator in this story. Not tonight. You glance at the trees again. The wind shifts. And for a second, just a second, you think you see something upright move between the trunks. No roar, no crash, just movement. Like a ghost in reverse. The smell hits you first like wet fur, dragged through a freezer full of old venison. Then comes the sound. Not a growl, not a roar, but something lower, deeper. Like a landslide breathing. You hold still because now you're face to face with it. Or more precisely, about knee to shoulder with it because this thing is tall. Meet Arctodus simus, the giant short-faced bear. An apex predator, a muscle-bound freak of nature, and quite possibly the largest terrestrial mammalian carnivore to ever live in North America. Standing fully upright, it could reach over 11 feet tall. That's the height of a basketball hoop, plus another terrifying 6 inches just for fun. Its skull is broad and blunt, giving it the short face that names it. Though really nothing about this thing looks short from where you're standing. It sees you, or rather it senses you. Bears even today have astonishing noses. An American black bear can smell food from over a mile away. Imagine what a hyper-sized Ice Age version could detect. Historians still debate whether Arctodus relied more on smell or sight when stalking prey, but one thing's for sure, you smell very, very interesting. You take a breath. Mist pours from your mouth, fogging the air. And it breathes too. Steam rolls from its nostrils like smoke from a furnace. Its shoulders are absurd higher than its head when on all fours. Its paws could smash a car window like tissue paper. Its claws aren't curved for climbing trees, they're built for raking earth. Flipping boulders and possibly ending arguments before they start. You freeze. It doesn't charge. It doesn't even seem angry. Instead, it watches you with the sort of grim confidence that only comes from never once being second place. For this, bear dominance is default. It wasn't the kind of predator that needed to sneak or ambush. No. Arctodus likely walked in and took what it wanted. Like a 600-kilogram mafia boss with a fur coat and no conscience. Some theories once painted it as a pure scavenger, bullying saber-toothed cats and dire wolves off their kills with its size alone. After all, why hunt when you can intimidate? But more recent research suggests it could have been a specialized predator built for speed endurance and open chase pursuit. You imagine that a bear galloping across the steppe like a monster on stilts, chasing down deer with the efficiency of a cheetah in drag. And here's an odd twist. While its bulk was intimidating, its bones were hollowed in a way that reduced weight without sacrificing strength. Sort of like a bird, or a very, very aggressive dirigible. This anatomical quirk gave it a surprising edge. Lighter legs meant faster movement, and that's not something we associate with animals the size of compact cars. Imagine being hunted by something taller than an NBA player and faster than a greyhound. That's not a nightmare. That's just Pleistocene Tuesday. Its jaws, on the other hand, were complicated. While its skull suggests massive bite force, Its teeth were strangely unspecialized, not the steak knives of a lion, nor the nutcrackers of a hyena. Some paleontologists think this hints at an omnivorous diet. Others argue that it just didn't need specialized teeth to eat what it bullied away from smaller carnivores. Either way, you're not curious enough to test it personally. Not unless you count as omnivore adjacent. The bear shifts turns and begins to lope away on all fours now, but you can still see how unnervingly long its forelimbs are. They swing like pendulums. There's a rhythm to it. You wonder for a moment if upright walking was just a tool in its arsenal. Something it did when surveying territory, intimidating rivals, or sniffing for leftovers. Still, there's something so human in the posture. The straightness of the spine, the confident swing of the arms. You half expect it to stop, look over its shoulder, and offer you stock advice. Instead, it fades into the trees, silent as snowfall. You wander forward slowly, taking in the footprints it leaves behind. They're spaced far apart, evidence of a long, purposeful gait. And in the middle of the path, pressed lightly into the frost, is something that doesn't make sense, a pile of crushed bird bones. No feathers, no flesh, just the delicate wreckage of wings beneath what looks like a paw print. Did the bear step on it by accident, or did it stop to snack on something too small to be worth dragging? And now the strangest detail of the evening, Arctodus was more closely related to the modern spectacled bear of South America than to your everyday brown bear or grizzly. Yes, the terrifying Ice Age apex predator has a cousin that eats fruit and lives in the Andes. Nature's family tree is weird. Odd fact, spectacled bears sometimes make hammocks out of branches to nap in. If Arctodus inherited any of that behavior, you'd be looking at an 11-foot-tall nightmare who maybe enjoyed a little lounging now and then. Unlikely. Probably. Hilarious? Absolutely. The cold is sinking deeper into your joints now, but you keep walking. Because you've just met the top of the food chain and it didn't eat you. Yet, but the deeper mystery isn't its size or diet or walking style. It's this, why did such a perfectly adapted creature vanish? You'll get there. But for now, you follow its trail through the snow. Past splintered trees, silent bison, and the occasional fossilized hairball. And in the back of your mind, something stirs a question you didn't know you'd been asking. If something once walked like a man and ruled like a god, is it really gone? You keep moving because the footprints haven't stopped. They trace along a frozen ridge skirting mammoth dung, broken bones, and patches of stubborn grass poking up through last month's thaw. And still, each step tells the same story. This was no clumsy beast lumbering on all fours. This was something that truly walked in a way that should make the hairs on your neck stand up. Because of this, bear didn't just look odd, it moved with eerie familiarity. Its legs were long, ridiculously so by bear standards. Where a grizzly lumbers, Arctodus simus strode. Its femur to tibia ratio looked more like a person's than a bear's. That's not just a fun anatomical trivia fact, it's a biomechanical mic drop. The creature's posture and proportions gave it a center of gravity surprisingly high off the ground. For a quadruped, that's downright weird. For a bear, it's almost heretical. You find a slope where the prints drag slightly, indicating a momentary shift to two-legged walking. Not a rear up and scare posture. No, a steady descent heel to toe, just like you. You pause, trying to mimic the length between steps. It's comically impossible. You look like a child in clown shoes trying to match an NBA player's treadmill workout. Paleontologists have analyzed those footprints before, especially from the Big Bone Lick area in Kentucky and the La Brea tar pits. In some cases, the stride patterns show an alternating bipedal gait, enough to make researchers ask, did it occasionally prefer walking upright? Historians still debate whether this was a common trait or just an emergency option. But let's be real, if a creature that large could walk like that even occasionally, it would have looked like a nightmarish blend of caveman and tank. Now, throw in the terrain. Arctodus didn't evolve in forests or jungles or comfy cave systems. This thing was built for wide-open spaces. Pleistocene North America was a land of giant prey and vast plains, perfect for speed, terrible for hiding. And this bear, it didn't want to hide. You imagine it now, upright on a ridge watching a herd of ancient camels. Yes, camels, because Ice Age North America was full of them in case your internal atlas needs updating. The bear doesn't charge. It waits, gauges the wind, then drops onto all fours and runs fast, frightening and straight. Not pouncing from the shadows, just overwhelming. Its leg structure made it a long-distance runner, at least compared to most other mega carnivores. It didn't rely on sudden ambushes, but on endurance and territory control. It was essentially the prehistoric bouncer of the prairie. It didn't need a fight, just the threat of one. And then there's the head, the infamous short face. That wasn't just an aesthetic choice. That skull shape allowed for incredible bite force and enhanced binocular vision. Most bears have broad snouts, great for rooting around or cracking berries. But Arctodus, it saw depth. It hunted with focus. It tracked across great distances with eyes set forward just like us, or wolves, or other pursuit predators. You reach a ridge where the bear likely stood once silhouetted against the horizon. The wind is sharp here, slicing through your layers, and you feel small. Not just in the physical sense, though. Yes, you're basically a pocket snack in bear terms, but cosmically. Like you've stepped into a timeline that forgot to end properly. And here's a fact no one asked for, but you're getting anyway. The average short-faced bear's brain was slightly smaller relative to its body than modern bears. That might sound like a downgrade, but it didn't need to invent tools or plot revenge. It just had to be strong, fast, and scary. Which it was. Mission accomplished. Below the ridge, you see what could be the remains of an old kill bone fragments scattered in a circle. Some cracked open, others marked by gnawing. The tooth marks are wide and deep, and judging by the spacing, only something with jaws the size of a watermelon could have made them. Was the bear walking upright because it was surveying this site, scouting from above? Being dramatic for effect? Who knows? But you begin to notice something else. As you follow the path downward, the terrain changes. Less snow, more mud. The prints don't get sloppier, they get more human. The heel strikes harder. The toe splay narrows. It's not a trick of the terrain, it's real. You stop, look behind you, nothing there. And just when you think you've acclimated to this bizarre hybrid predator, another twist. The possibility that Arctodus simus is part of why some indigenous traditions speak of upright beasts in the snow. Creatures too big to be men, too silent to be bears. No claws scraping tree trunks, just footsteps, heavy ones, vanishing into fog. Some cultures describe these creatures as spirits, others as messengers. A few whispered in twilight speak of bears who walked like men and lived in the edge between worlds. You don't know if Arctodus inspired those legends, but it's easier to believe now than it was an hour ago. Up ahead, a cave mouth yawns open. The prints veer past it, not into it. And that's the final clue tonight. Arctodus simus wasn't much for caves. Unlike modern bears, it didn't den in them often. That posture, that build not suited to crawling into tight places. No. This bear slept out in the open, probably in windbreaks or natural depressions. The world was its mattress, and you're now the only one following its ghost trail. You sit down on a rock trying to make sense of what you've seen. The way it moved, the way it looked back. It was a bear, but not really. It was something else, something ancient, something bipedal, just enough to haunt the dreams of whatever followed. Down the slope and onto the open plain, the trail widens. Not the prints, those stay as steady as ever, but the feeling. The trees thin out behind you, and ahead, lies what can only be described as an ice age prairie, wide wind-bitten and weirdly golden in the fading light. A cold sun drops behind the hills, and you spot herds, distant enormous herds, slowly grazing across a broken land. You see mammoths first, their tusks curving like ivory scythes. Then ancient horses shorter than today's breed's manes, wild like seaweed in the wind. And they're just to the left bison. Not the squat, shaggy cousins you've seen in modern documentaries, but bison latifrons with horns longer than your arm span and an attitude that screams medieval jousting match. And through all of it walks him, the bear. He doesn't run, doesn't charge, just strolls upright down the rise like he owns the place. And honestly, he kind of does. You duck low in the grass watching. The herds part like waves around him. The mammoths give him side-eye. The horses prance nervously. Even the bison shift, slightly not panicked, but respectful. Everyone here seems to agree if this guy wants a seat at the dinner table, you don't argue. You hand him a plate and pray he's full. This is not apex predation in the way we usually imagine. No blood, no chase, just presence. It's dominance by reputation, the prehistoric equivalent of showing up to a bar and everyone suddenly finding somewhere else to be. He doesn't even need to prove himself. He is the proof. That's the thing about Arctodus simus. For all its power, it may have been less of a hunter and more of an opportunist. Historians still debate whether it specialized in active hunting or aggressive scavenging. It likely did both depending on the day, the season, and the dumb luck of finding some freshly dead megafauna lying around. And honestly, why waste calories chasing something when you can just take it? You creep closer, hoping to get a clearer view without becoming bear jerky. The wind shifts. You freeze. So does he. The bear slowly turns his head not toward you, but toward a cluster of dire wolves tearing into something you hadn't noticed before. A downed camel ribcage steaming in the cold. The wolves look up, pause, then scatter like someone just rang a dinner bell and yelled fire. He ambles forward, still upright, still relaxed. He doesn't even glance at the carcass until he's right there towering over the kill site. Then with a deep huff he drops to all fours and sniffs. A few experimental nibbles, a tug at the leg, then a full crunching chomp. You watch bone and tendon disappear into his mouth like spaghetti. Efficient, brutal, and completely unbothered. He's not in a hurry. No one's going to stop him. Why would they? Oddly, he eats around the organs. That might not seem important, but modern bears often go straight for the liver and other soft tissues. This one, more interested in the hindquarters, muscle not guts, protein over vitamins. Could be coincidence, or it could mean something deeper about his metabolic needs. Historians still argue about it. They argue about everything honestly. You notice something else. The bear doesn't eat all of it. Just enough. Then he wanders off, leaving a half-devoured camel like an abandoned buffet plate. He could have stayed, could have eaten more. But the food wasn't the point. The reminder was. The announcement, I am still here. That's what sets Arctodus apart from its furry contemporaries. It didn't hide, it announced itself. With posture, with movement, with footprints that still scare archaeologists half to death. Odd fact of the day. The walking distance between a short-faced bear's hind legs was so large that it overlaps almost perfectly with early hominin stride width. Some fossil footprints have even been misidentified at first glance as human. Then you measure them, and suddenly it's like discovering Bigfoot's older, meaner cousin crashed the barbecue. You lay in the grass and watch the last rays of sun catch the bear's fur. There's no roar, no final confrontation. Just a moment, the bear silhouetted against the plains, upright and impossibly still, like a statue carved from dusk. And just as quickly as he came, he's gone. Vanished into the deeper dark, leaving behind only silence and half a camel. You lie there longer than you meant to. The sky shifts to indigo. The stars begin their slow reveal. And you find yourself wondering how many ancient humans lay in this same grass, watching that same bear walk upright, and thinking, Is this what gods look like? Because it's hard not to assign myth to a creature that walks like a man and eats like a legend. You finally rise, brush off the frost, and begin to follow the trail again. But slower now, more cautious. Less like a traveler and more like someone walking through the dream of an animal too powerful to remember you, and too old to forget. You wake up to the crunch of bone. Not yours, thankfully, but close. Something nearby is breaking ribs like breadsticks, and you don't even want to know whose. The air is still cold enough to crack your breath in two, and your fire has died down to embers. Whatever's feeding out there didn't mind the smoke, didn't mind you. You stay very still and peek over the log you slept behind. There it is again. The bear, the same one maybe. Or another. Hard to tell. You're not exactly cataloging fur patterns. But this time, you're not seeing him in motion. You're seeing the aftermath. What's left of the kill lies mangled beside a toppled sapling. Bits of hide and tendon, broken vertebrae, a twisted jawbone with the tongue still lolling like a wet ribbon. And around it, claw marks, deep, straight, angry, like a giant house cat rearranging its living room. The body. Probably a juvenile mastodon, not a full-grown one. They were too much trouble even for Arctodus, but this one young, isolated, stupid. You've seen that look in scavengers before, the one that says, I didn't kill this, but I'm not saying no to the leftovers. Only this time. The blood is still warm. This brings you to the eternal Ice Age debate. Was Arctodus simus a killer or just a really intense lunch thief? Historians still debate whether this bear actively hunted or simply bullied other predators away from their kills. But tonight, under these stars beside this not-quite-frozen corpse, it doesn't feel like a debate. It feels like yes, as in yes, it could hunt. And yes, it could scavenge. And yes, it was perfectly willing to do both. A few meters away, you spot something strange: saber-tooth prints. Large ones pacing in a circle. There are claw marks in the dirt too, signs of a fight, a standoff, or maybe just nervous pacing. But the saber-tooth is gone now, and the bear is not. You imagine the scene: the big cat brings down a weak mastodon calf. A successful kill, hours of meat ahead. Then he shows up, upright, silent. Too big to fight, too fast to escape. And the saber-tooth, all muscle and murder teeth, just backs off. That's not prey dynamics. That's mob hierarchy. The bear doesn't just want the meat. He wants the win. What's even stranger is how little of the kill he eats. Again, he feeds like someone who can always get another meal, not greedy, just efficient. You watch him tear away a back leg, toss it to one side, then move on to the ribs. He pauses to lick at the marrow, his tongue long and disturbingly pink in the moonlight. You try not to blink, try not to move, and then it hits you. He's not alone. From the shadows, smaller shapes emerge. Not bears, not wolves, humans. You flatten yourself behind the log again. No one sees you. These are early people, maybe Clovis, maybe someone older. They're watching too, but not with curiosity, with calculation. A man lifts a spear, lowers it again. A woman points to the leftover bones. They're waiting. The bear finally moves on, dragging the ribcage into the trees like it's a travel snack. He doesn't look back, doesn't care. And the humans, they rush forward not to fight, but to scavenge the scavenger. Pulling hide scraps, marrow, bones, anything edible. Their faces are calm, focused. They've done this before. And now, you see the truth in this world: everyone steals from everyone. Predators steal kills from predators. Humans steal scraps from giants. Even the trees are stealing heat from the dying fire. You step closer. One of the humans sees you, nods. Doesn't speak, just gestures to the carcass as if to say, help yourself. You don't. Because that bear is still out there, and you've got enough survival instinct to know that even a leftover can get you mauled. One woman, elderly, wrapped in hides, stitched with bone needles, starts murmuring something over the bones. A prayer, maybe, or a warning. She drags her finger through the blood on the snow and draws a symbol. A bear upright with fire inside its belly. You realize this isn't just survival, it's myth-making. Already this bear is a story, a creature too large to forget, too strange to name. They're not just eating what it left behind, they're learning from it. Mimicking it, fearing it. Odd fact. Some indigenous legends from the Arctic to the Rockies tell of animals that walked upright and vanished into the forests, never fully dying. Some believe they became spirits, others say they'll return. One tale describes a giant bear who would knock on the walls of tents at night just once. If you answered, gone. If you stayed quiet, it left. You think about that as you quietly back away from the scene, boots crunching in the snow. The wind picks up again, dragging the scent of blood into the trees. And somewhere in that same forest, the bear is probably licking its paws, wondering what all the fuss was about. You find higher ground, settle on a ridge, and look back at the valley. The humans are already moving off, dragging bones and scraps in silence. The stars are high now, cold and glittering. And far below, you can just barely make out a shape upright, slow alone, cutting across the plains like a shadow with purpose. You lie back, close your eyes. Try to forget that the ground beneath you once belonged to something who didn't need to run to conquer. Just walk. Dawn cracks slow and quiet across the horizon. The kind of light that creeps in sideways, not so much illuminating the world as reluctantly admitting it still exists. You blink against it, stiff from sleeping in a hollow above the plains where the wind spent all night combing through your bones. Below you, the world stirs. And what a world it is. This is the realm of giants, no other way to say it. Arctodus didn't live in isolation. He was one actor in a packed Ice Age theater, and the cast was outrageous saber-toothed cats with banana-sized fangs, giant ground sloths the size of trucks, vultures taller than you, and of course the ever-present woolly mammoths. They moved across this land like clouds of muscle and memory. You descend toward a valley where the frozen ground has been churned by dozens, maybe hundreds of heavy-footed travelers. Massive prints from mammoths form parallel trails, while the three-toed tracks of terror birds crisscross them in spidery haste. You even spot the distinctive wide pad prints of dire wolves, padded and cautious. But it's the bear's prints, long staggered and hauntingly two-legged, that stand out. He walked here too. Not yesterday, maybe not even this season, but the impression remains. You can almost hear it, the crunch of snow beneath a body built for intimidation. Odd fact of the day. Some ground sloths, Megatherium to be precise, had claws that could slice through a tree trunk, but they ate plants? Mostly. Maybe. Historians still debate whether they were strict herbivores or opportunistic omnivores. Either way, Arctodus gave them space. Even giants have respect for giants. You come across a field where bones lie in every direction, like a prehistoric battlefield frozen mid-roar. But there are no signs of conflict, just volume. So many species, so much mass. The Ice Age didn't do anything halfway. Even the beavers back then could reach the size of a Labrador. You kneel beside a trampled area where the flattened grass tells a story of passage, a moment frozen in memory. The mammoths moved through here, side by side. Behind them came horses, then camels. Then those same dragging, staggered steps him. The bear. You imagine him walking between these creatures utterly unbothered. Where a lion would crouch, Arctodus would stroll. Where wolves would encircle and harass, he would simply approach, and everything moved out of his way. There's a kind of mythic charisma to that. And it wasn't just muscle. That bear had range. Fossil evidence places Arctodus from Alaska to Florida. That's not migration, that's domination. And not many animals can claim that kind of turf without running into a few arguments. But who argued with a creature that stood taller than a moose and possibly smelled you coming from 5 kilometers away? The wind shifts and for a moment you smell smoke. Not yours. Someone else. Humans. You spot them downwind, a loose band of foragers moving through the tall grass. They carry tools stone-tipped sinew-bound, and one of them has a mammoth tusk slung across his back like it's just another Tuesday. They walk confidently, but you notice how they avoid the trail of the bear, not out of fear, out of respect. That's important. You can fear a storm, but you respect the thing that survives one. You think about how these early people lived alongside this walking shadow. How they learned to read its signs where it fed, where it passed, where it slept. If it even slept. No bear caves for this guy. Remember that, no known dens. Just shallow beds scratched into the tundra or low, windy hollows beneath trees. Places where the wind wouldn't touch the ears and the stars couldn't find the eyes. And that raises another question. Did the bear sleep standing? Could it? You laugh quietly. Maybe that's where all those early tales of upright forest creatures come from, some hunter stumbling across an Arctodus, half asleep on its back legs, swaying in the wind, like some kind of ancient sleepwalker. You press forward and stumble upon something unexpected, a smear of dark fur caught on a broken branch. Coarse, black-brown, unmistakably ursine. You pick it up and roll it between your fingers. It's like wire, strong, cold. You wonder how many coats like this once moved through the Ice Age, terrifying anything with a pulse. Nearby, a partially fossilized tooth pokes from the dirt. Huge, yellowed. You don't even try to pull it. The earth owns it now. But it's just another reminder you are walking across a cemetery with no walls. A land where the bones of titans rise like weeds. The sun is higher now, and with it comes sound. A flock of geese overhead honking like they invented air travel. In the distance, bison thunder across a shallow stream. And faintly, so faintly you think you hear that low rumbling exhale again. Not wind, not thunder, just breath. Like the land itself is tired of holding in all these secrets. You sit for a while. Let your thoughts blur. You've seen him enough times now, this not-quite-bear, not-quite-man creature. Always moving. Always just ahead. You've watched how the other giants make space for him. You've watched how people do too. It's not just about his size. It's about the way he moves through the world. Confident, solitary, immune to panic. A beast who knew he didn't need a pack, just a path. You finally rise. The cold hasn't gone anywhere, but the light makes it gentler. You glance back at the trail of prints leading across the open plain. You'll follow them. Of course you will. But not because you're chasing a monster. You're following a shadow. You walk into deeper snow now, the kind that crunches like old parchment and swallows your boots whole. The trees are skeletal, spread out just enough to whisper conspiracy theories to one another. And ahead of you, half obscured by a veil of frost, those prints again. Left, right, left, right. A line drawn by something that doesn't fear direction. Or you. You crouch beside one of them. It's weird how fast you've grown familiar with the shape. Not paw-like, not fully human, just wrong. The impression is shallow but confident, the kind of step made by something that wasn't in a hurry and didn't need to look over its shoulder. You look over your shoulder, nothing. Just the wind, just the trees. This is where the bear begins to haunt you, because now you're not just seeing his trail, you're seeing his shape in the landscape. A tree stump that looks like a hunched shoulder. A shadow between two pines that holds its breath a little too long. You shake it off. But do you? You reach a frozen stream and see them again, overlapping prints. The bears, but also others. A wolf maybe. No, three. Dire wolves. One of them circles, another backs off. And there, smack in the middle, a set of hind prints that deepen and twist like someone shifted weight and stood up. You trace the lines with your glove. Upright again, just for a moment, but enough to feel like a chill in your gut. Arctodus simus walked like a man, not just because of how its legs were built, but because it could, when necessary. Maybe when startled. maybe when testing the air, but also, maybe just maybe because it wanted to. Historians still debate whether upright walking was an intentional behavior or just a biomechanical accident. But here, in the silence of the forest, intent and accident start to feel like the same thing. The effect is the same, it looked human. Too human. And it gets weirder. You follow the stream picking through tangled branches when you find a set of marks on a tree. Deep gouges claw width apart high above your head. Bears mark trees. They still do it. But this is almost vertical, taller than any bear alive could reach. You look up and see where the bark peeled back aged now into a long, pale scar. The bear wasn't just standing, it was reaching, maybe marking territory, maybe showing off, or maybe just maybe reminding anyone who passed that this forest already had a king, and kings don't crouch. There's an odd sense of ritual to it, like when people build stone circles or carve symbols into canyon walls, not because they're needed, but because the act itself matters. The bear didn't need to mark that tree, but he did. And now you're here looking at it wondering what it meant. You climb a low rise. The trees here grow closer together, and the snow beneath your boots takes on that crunchy, squeaky quality that makes every step feel like an alarm. Up ahead, something hangs from a low branch. You duck beneath it. It's fur. Black, coarse, torn at the edge, and it's tied to the tree with a strip of sinew. You look around. More strips. Hanging from branches draped over rocks arranged in ways that feel deliberate. Human hands did this long ago. Before ink, before borders, before anyone thought to write down the difference between real and myth. And in the center of this strange forest shrine, something waits a rock carved with the faint image of a figure. Arms long, head low, upright. It's him. They didn't worship the bear, they didn't hunt it either. They observed, passed stories, drew symbols, warned their children not to follow the wrong footprints too far into the snow. Odd fact, in some indigenous myths across the Pacific, Northwest, and Great Plains, there are tales of giant hairy men who walked alone in the woods, too large to be men, too silent to be bears. They didn't attack, didn't speak, they just watched. And when you turned to face them, they vanished. You sit by the carving, letting your breath fog the air around it. There's something peaceful about it now. The fear is still there, yes, but it's softened. Filtered through the centuries like river water through stone. You feel less like a trespasser and more like a guest. And that's when it happens. A sound, not a growl, not a rustle, just the soft, unmistakable crunch of snow under a two-legged stride. You don't move, don't breathe. But you know you're not alone. It doesn't come closer, doesn't need to. It lingers just outside the tree line where the shadows are deepest, and the wind dies before it gets a chance to howl. You close your eyes, count your heartbeats, and when you open them again, the forest is empty, except for the prince, leading away. You rise, not slowly, not quickly, just calmly. Because now you understand, this isn't about chasing. This is about following, about remembering, about walking where something else walked before. And maybe, just maybe, it's still walking. Night again. You've lost track of how many, but this one feels different. The cold is wetter now, clinging instead of cutting. The clouds hang low and thick over the trees, and the wind barely stirs. It's the kind of dark that wraps around your ears and settles in your spine like regret. And somewhere in that dark, something breathes. It's not close, not yet, but it's there. You feel it the way you feel someone staring at you across a crowded room, an invisible weight pressing in from a distance just far enough to make you question your own senses. Still, you don't run. That part of you, the modern part, is long gone. You've followed the bear this far. Not just his trail, but the ripple he left through time. His presence lingers in the land. You can't always see him, but you can see what he did. The places where animals gave wide berth, the half-eaten kills, the upright tracks that walk out of frozen riverbeds, like the prints of a ghost who forgot how to vanish. You find shelter, under a natural overhang carved from stone and wind. It's shallow, not a cave, not really, but deep enough to block the breeze. And judging by the claw marks etched into the walls, you're not the first to camp here. The fire crackles slow and low, throwing light that doesn't reach far enough to explain the darkness beyond. You eat something dried and tasteless, chew without tasting, and settle in with your back against stone. And then the breathing again. You're not imagining it. It's steady, rhythmic, measured like someone asleep on their feet. It's just outside the overhang, maybe 10 steps away. You lean forward, slow and stupid, and peer into the dark. Nothing. No movement, no shape. Just that sound. Inhale, pause, exhale. You've heard bears breathe before. You once spent a summer too close to black bears in British Columbia. This isn't that. This isn't the deep, panting breath of a creature recovering from motion. This is slow, deliberate, curious. You grip your stick, not a weapon, really more a suggestion, and listen harder. Then silence. That somehow is worse. You wait and wait. And just when you're about to convince yourself it was a trick of the wind, a low sound rolls in like gravel stirred underwater. Not quite a growl, not quite a voice. A presence. You step outside the shelter heart doing something uncooperative in your chest. And there at the edge of the clearing you see him. Not standing, not walking. Watching. The firelight catches just enough shoulders like armored boulders. Head low, eyes reflecting gold, and nothing else. He's down on all fours now, but the way he holds himself, you know he could stand. Any moment. One slow rise, and you'd see the shape again. That too-human silhouette that feels like it should come with a name and a warning. But he doesn't rise. He just breathes. You don't speak, you don't move. Neither does he. The two of you stay like that, strangers at the edge of a sentence neither wants to finish. There's a tension, sure, but no malice. Not yet. You realize suddenly that this bear has never had reason to fear anything. Not in a long time. Maybe ever. What would that do to a mind? To be alone at the top for so long? The idea of threat becomes academic. Odd fact. Some researchers believe Arctodus simus may have been so successful in its niche that it became ecologically isolated. Not by geography, but by dominance. It didn't need to compete. It didn't need to adapt quickly, which, ironically, may have contributed to its downfall once things started changing. Historians still debate whether it was climate change, human arrival, or some ecological cascade that brought the bear down. But tonight, none of that matters. Tonight, he's still here. You blink, and he's gone. Not vanished in a poof of smoke, just walked away while you were too scared to notice. Typical. You check the ground. His prints are there, fresh and clear. They arc around your fire past the shelter, then head back into the woods. You don't follow, not tonight. Instead, you sit by the fire and try to imagine what it was like to be him. Not just a predator, but a presence. A figure tall enough to cast shadows into future mythologies. You picture the first humans watching from behind trees, whispering stories that would stretch over millennia until the bear was no longer a bear, but something larger, something monstrous, something sacred. You toss a twig into the fire and hear the crackle. The wind picks up, and for just a moment you feel like he left something behind. Not a footprint, not a bone, but space. A suggestion of shape in the night. The idea that something could still be out there, too big for the trees, too upright for the wolves, too quiet for your own peace of mind. You lie back in your bedroll and stare up at the stars. They're bright tonight, indifferent and icy. Somewhere out there, they say stars die and leave black holes behind. Maybe animals do too. Not just in space, but here, on Earth. Giant, upright shadows who walk off into the dark and forget how to come back. The sun comes late today, sluggish and red, like someone spilled wine across the horizon. You wake with the taste of ash in your mouth and a lingering suspicion that something watched you sleep. Maybe it's just your nerves, or maybe it's the way the prints look fresher this morning. You check again. They are. You rise slowly, Dust the frost from your clothes and follow them without a plan. Because that's what you do now. You follow him. You don't lead. You don't hunt. You just trail behind. Today the trail leads uphill into older forest. Pines give way to spruce, and the ground becomes a mess of roots, lichen, and crusted snow. You don't see bones, no fresh kills, just silence and more of those prints. And then you see the bones. At first, it looks like a deer. Then something bigger, a bear. No two bears, both long dead. What's left of them lies in a shallow depression between two trees partially covered by moss and snow. Ribs exposed, limbs scattered. The kind of scene that says don't ask too many questions. But you do. You kneel. Look closer. One skull is shattered, the other is cracked at the jaw. And there on the shoulder blade of the smaller skeleton, deep gouges. Parallel, precise, ursine. You step back slowly. This wasn't a predator ambushing prey. This was something else, something personal. Historians still debate whether Arctodus simus engaged in cannibalism. Most say probably not, but probably is doing a lot of work in that sentence. After all, when food grows scarce, even apex predators start making morally questionable choices. Especially if they're alone. Especially if the thing they're eating is competition. And that's the thing, these bones. They're not ancient, not fossilized. Not yet. Which means this didn't happen 10,000 years ago. It happened recently. You scan the surrounding trees, half expecting something to step out of them on two legs. Nothing does. But the cold feels sharper now. The forest is quiet in the wrong way, like everything is holding its breath. You start to do the same. Odd fact, modern polar bears, when desperate, have been recorded eating their own kind. Not out of malice, just biology. It's not good. But it happens, so why not him? You push forward, because of course you do. The prince starts circling now, less direct, more chaotic. He wasn't traveling, he was searching. Maybe for shelter, maybe for food, maybe for the only thing lonelier than himself. You come to a clearing ringed by trees with boulders scattered like broken teeth. At the center, something large, rotted, and unspeakably foul-smelling. Another carcass, not bear, not mammoth, something in between. There are no footprints around it, just drag marks. The bear brought it here and left it. Why? You crouch beside it, holding your breath. The meat is picked clean, but not entirely eaten. Bits of skin hang loose like wet paper. One eye socket is crushed. The mouth is frozen in a kind of half-smile. This wasn't a meal. This was a message. You don't know what it says. And that's when you hear it again. Not breath this time. Not movement. A low moan. It's not human. But it's not just animal either. It comes from behind a fallen log. You step toward it and no, you stop. You've made it this far. Let someone else find out. But still, you look. Behind the log lies another bear. Smaller, younger, breathing shallowly. Eyes open but cloudy. It's dying. From injury. From starvation. You don't know, but you know this Arctodus didn't kill it. He brought it here. He left it. Was it mercy? Was it exile? Was it just survival? You sit beside the creature and watch it breathe. You count the ribs through its fur. You don't touch it. You're not stupid, but you watch. And for a moment, it watches you back. Then it stops. You wait for the next breath. It doesn't come. The wind returns like it never left. The trees lean in, and suddenly the forest feels too small. You stand. You walk away. You don't look back. Not because you're heartless, but because you're scared you might see something upright watching from the trees. Something deciding whether you are the next exception. You walk faster now. Not a run. Not yet. But you feel the heat in your chest, that quiet panic that knows it's not alone anymore. And in the snow behind you, your own tracks follow the same rhythm. Left, right, heel to two. Like a man. Like a bear. Like something in between. The wind shifts again. Colder now, slicing clean through your coat and settling against your spine like a warning finger. You keep walking fast but careful as the forest thins and the trail breaks into frostbitten grass. Ahead, rising like a question, a bluff juts into the sky, a natural overlook worn smooth by ancient glaciers and generations of watchers. You climb. The view from the top steals your breath before the cold does. A long stretch of valley yawns below, carved by time and softened by snow. Herds drift like clouds mammoths. Near the river bend, horses gathered along ridgelines, caribou, trotting between windbreaks of birch and pine. A world in motion, a world that once belonged to him. You see the fire first, then the people. A small group, maybe 6, maybe 10, gathered near the base of the bluff. Early humans. They sit low to the ground, their tools flint-edged and well-used, their voices soft murmurs beneath the wind. One of them, an old man with a face like weathered stone, is drawing shapes in the ash beside the fire. You descend slowly, not out of stealth but reverence. These people are not surprised to see you. In fact, they barely react at all. The elder simply nods and gestures to a space near the fire. You sit. A younger woman begins to speak, not to you but to the flames. Her words are slow, melodic, more rhythm than language. It's a story. One that's been told too many times to be forgotten. You don't understand the words, but you understand the shape of it. A figure in the snow, huge, silent, upright. She describes how it came in the night and left nothing but breath in the air. How it stood on 2 legs and watched from the trees, not hunting, not fleeing, just witnessing. How it once followed a band like theirs for 3 days and 3 nights, always keeping its distance, never sleeping, never eating, never blinking. One man offers a joke half-whispered and too fast for you to catch, but the others don't laugh. The elder smacks him gently with a stick. This is a serious story. You begin to realize these people knew Arctodus, not as an animal, as a presence, something too large for normal categories. Not spirit, not man, not beast. Just him. They share more stories. Some of the challenge young men daring to track the giant bear alone, often never returning. Others of blessing a winter kill left untouched by the creature, as though acknowledging the tribe's hunger. And one tale softer than the rest, about a child who wandered too far into the woods and returned days later unharmed, saying only, "It walked like my father." Historians still debate whether Arctodus and early humans interacted directly. Some claim there is not enough archaeological overlap. Others point to symbolic cave markings and early bear cults. But here, around this fire, the debate doesn't matter. The memory is living, and it breathes. Later, the group offers you food, cooked roots, strips of dried meat, something bitter and chewy that might be moss. You eat. You listen. You become part of the silence. And then the elder gestures for you to follow. He leads you beyond the camp up a narrow trail marked with bones and symbols burned into wood. The path ends at a stone wall. On it, a painting, simple, deliberate. A bear, but not on all fours. Upright. Arms long, shoulders wide, eyes round. Beside it, small human figures. Not running, not praying, just standing, looking up. You reach out, touch the stone. The paint flakes beneath your fingers. The elder nods once, then turns to leave. No ceremony, no explanation. You don't need one. You remain until dark, watching the shadows shift across the wall. The wind softens like the valley itself is sleeping. Odd fact of the night. There's a cave in Europe with 20,000-year-old paintings of bears shown both standing and sitting postures rarely drawn for other animals. Some archaeologists think it implies special status, maybe even ritual. And here, half a world away, you see the same posture, the same silhouette, different continent, same memory. Eventually, you return to your spot by the fire. The others are asleep, curled in hides, breathing slow. You lie down too. But sleep doesn't come easily. Because your dreams tonight are full of upright shadows, and all of them walk with purpose. One even turns and looks at you, and it nods. Not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. You wake before dawn. The prints are already there, fresh, circling the camp, never closer than a few meters. You smile somehow. You were seen, and not forgotten. The camp behind you fades into mist. You follow the trail again. Still those long, deliberate strides through snow and brush, always forward, never wandering. Today, the prints arc wide around a thicket of trees, then climb toward higher ground. Not a place for cover, not for food, just a broad ridge of wind-scoured rock. The kind of place a creature might stand alone just to look. You follow. At the top, you find a shallow depression in the stone. Not a cave, not a den, just an indentation maybe 3 meters wide, roughly oval, and lined with dead grass and flattened snow. In the center bones, some old, some fresh, a cracked antler, a broken hoof, a feather large, iridescent, probably from one of those oversized vultures that circled yesterday. There are no claw marks here, no signs of tearing or frenzy, just remains as if left behind by something too heavy to carry guilt and too hungry to care. It's not a nest, not really, but it's a bed. And suddenly something makes sense. Unlike modern bears, Arctodus simus didn't use caves. It didn't need to. Its sheer size made cave sleeping impractical. The entrances were too narrow, the ceilings too low. And besides, who would dare disturb it in the open wind wolves? Please. It likely slept wherever it wanted, pressed into hillsides behind rock faces under fallen trees. The Ice Age didn't build it houses. It built it platforms. Historians still debate whether the lack of cave remains means Arctodus ranged further afield or simply left fewer fossilizable traces. But if you ask the ground beneath your boots, it'll tell you this: the bear walked above, slept above, lived above. Not in the shadows, but in the open where everything could see. You step into the depression and kneel. The grass here is crushed, flat, frozen in the outline of a massive body. The shape is unmistakable, shoulders here, hips there, the back curved slightly like a resting hill. You place your hand where its chest must have touched the ground. It's warm. You jerk your hand back. No sun touches this spot, not yet, but the ground is warmer than it should be. Fresh. Maybe minutes, maybe seconds. You look around, no movement, but something was here. You stay low, scanning the landscape. If he's nearby, he's not making himself known. And why would he? This isn't his first guest, probably not his last. You're just another shadow drifting through his kingdom. You pull your coat tighter and sit down in the bed. Not because it's safe, but because it's his. You want to feel what he felt. See what he saw. The ridge overlooks a shallow basin. Herds move slowly across it. Bison, caribou, even a few more of those prehistoric horses with their nervous twitching ears. You wonder how often the bear sat here and watched them. Not hunting, just watching, like you. There's a strange peace in that idea. That even something built for dominance could still choose quiet. That even a giant might sit still just to see the sunrise. Odd fact spectacled, bears, the closest living relatives of Arctodus, sometimes sleep in trees. Huge nests made of branches and leaves. Not for protection, not even for height, just preference, comfort, maybe even habit. Who's to say Arctodus didn't have similar instincts? You picture him now shifting massive shoulders into place, resting that ridiculous skull on folded arms, breathing slow, steady content. No threat, no hunger, just rest. And you realize something no one talks about where apex predators sleep. We know how they hunt, how they fight, but rarely where they dream. Maybe that's the final mystery. Not how they died, but how they lived when no one was watching. You lie back in the grass, fitting yourself awkwardly into the space his ribs once occupied. It's too big for you? Of course it is. But you stretch anyway, arms wide, and close your eyes. And in that moment you feel it. Not fear, not awe, but proximity to something older, something slower, something that didn't need myth to be unforgettable. You stay like that for a long while, listening to the wind, letting your breath match the rhythm of a creature who might have done the same 10,000 years ago in the same place. Eventually you rise. You dust yourself off. You leave the bed untouched. You do not look back, not out of fear, but out of respect. And behind you the prints continue, always forward, always walking. The hill fades behind you, and with it, that strange warmth still radiating from the bear's bed. You descend in silence, boots crunching snow in the slow, hypnotic rhythm you've come to know too well. Step breath, the cadence of Arctodus. And that's when you find the claw. It's not attached to anything, just lying in the snow, half buried near a frozen stream. Long as your hand curved like a scythe, dull at the tip but still intimidating. You lift it carefully. It's heavy ridged, smooth on the underside and worn at the base where bone once met keratin. You picture it where it belonged at the end of a paw, thick as your thigh, swinging forward, not for climbing, not for digging, but for ending things. It's strange. You've seen so much of him already. Footprints, fur, scars on trees, but this is the first piece that feels personal. You can feel the weight of it in your palm, the power it once had. A tool of survival, a signature. Odd fact. While many modern bears have claws evolved for versatility, gripping climbing, tearing Arctodus seems to have gone all in on power. Its forelimbs weren't just strong, they were absurd. One fossilized humorist suggested a shoulder structure capable of lifting massive weights paired with those long, wicked claws. Think more demolition equipment than forest animal. You tuck the claw into your pack. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. You follow the stream, now tracking the prints where the bear once walked. You're starting to notice how little hesitation they show. No circling, no doubling back. This wasn't a creature that second-guessed itself. Wherever it went, it meant to go. You stop at a shallow pool of ice where the prints pause. The surface is cracked slightly, as if something stood here for a long time staring down at its reflection. You kneel beside it. You do the same. What did he see? A monster, a king, a mistake. Historians still debate the bear's diet, not whether it ate meat, it definitely did, but whether it was primarily carnivorous or opportunistically omnivorous. Some argue it hunted, some say it scavenged. Others suggest it did whatever worked best that day. But everyone agrees on one point: it was built like a predator. The skeletal structure says it all. Long legs for distance, immense forearms for power, a wide chest for lung capacity, but it's the claws, those massive uncurved blades, that tell the real story. These weren't tools for finesse. They weren't meant to fish salmon out of streams or tickle berries off bushes. These claws were for force, for pinning, raking, smashing. You move on. Later you come across a partially frozen carcass. This one's different. A ground sloth, maybe a juvenile. Most of the soft tissue is gone. But something odd catches your eye. The skull is cracked neatly down the center, like it was split with surgical precision. You examine the marks. Wide spacing, crushing depth. The kind of damage you don't get from teeth alone. You find a gouge near the shoulder blade, claw-shaped, about the same length as the one in your pack. This wasn't a scavenging, it was a takedown. And suddenly the myth fades just a little. Because now you're seeing him not as a walking legend, but as what he really was: a bear. A hunter. A thing with motives that boil down to simple math: effort versus reward. You sit by the carcass, pulling your coat tighter. It's strange how comfortless a dead fire feels now. You're used to warmth in the dark, but the bear, he thrived in the cold, slept through wind, walked into storms. You envy that. The simplicity, the clarity, the power. You rise and follow the trail again. As you crest a low hill, you notice how the snow is trampled now, not just the bear's prints, but others. Hooves, paws, clawed feet, the remnants of a prehistoric crossroads. This was a high-traffic zone once, a place where giants came and went, and at the center of it all, his prints. Never avoiding, never yielding. You crouch and press your hand into one of them. Your fingers don't come close to filling the outline. You feel small, but not powerless. You're not walking behind him anymore. You're walking with him. And in that moment, you realize this isn't a story about an animal. It's about a shape, a silhouette that refused to vanish, a memory that left claw marks in the earth. You turn as the wind picks up again, blowing snow across the ground, filling in the tracks behind you, but not the ones ahead. Those remain clear, and they always will. The ice is different here. It's thinner, more delicate. You tread carefully along the edge of a once mighty glacial field, now reduced to a long stretch of crystalline mud and meltwater. Beneath your boots, frost fractures like old glass. You move slow, not out of fear, but out of respect, because this is where he vanished. Not just from your sight, from history. The trail leads to the edge of a thaw basin where sediment chokes the valley floor. Around you, silence. Ahead of you, nothing. No more prints, no more signs. Just the last place he stood. You approach the edge of the basin. A depression maybe a kilometer across, deep, wind-scoured. Water pools in its heart, half-frozen, rimmed with grass that never should have grown this far north. And at the center, half-submerged in mud, you spot the bones. Massive, yellowed, undeniable. Ribs, like warped fence posts. A femur thick as your torso. Part of a skull. The wide cheek flared the snout almost too short to look real. He died here. You sit down beside him. You don't say anything. What would you say? This is how it ends. Not with a roar or a fall or a final stand. Just a collapse. A slow fading. The cold retreating the forests, moving in. The climate shifted. The prey vanished, the giants followed. And the bear, the one who walked like a man, lay down and didn't get up. Odd fact, radiocarbon dating from sites in Alaska suggests that Arctodus simus persisted later than many of its megafaunal cousins. Not by much, but enough to matter. Enough to suggest that it didn't vanish overnight. It dwindled, faded, like the last ember in a long burning fire. Historians still debate whether humans played a role in that. Some say yes, overhunting habitat stress competition. Others argue the bear was already on the decline, outpaced by changing landscapes and better adapted predators like brown bears and wolves. But here in this quiet valley, the theories feel smaller than the bones. You rise and begin to walk the rim of the basin, slowly, like you're circling a grave, because you are. This wasn't just where a bear died. This was where a present ceased to echo. Where something too big to forget became a myth then. A maybe then a nothing. But you're not ready to let that happen. You sit at the edge and take out the claw. You place it on the ground beside you. The wind catches it, rocking it gently like a pendulum before it settles into stillness again. And you think not about how he died, but how he lived. Upright, fearless, watching the world from eye level with the moon. What did he see as the last of the mammoths wandered off? As the saber-tooths disappeared from the hills? Did he miss them? Did he even notice? Or did he stand on some rise like this, watching it all go quiet and think, well, that's that then. You wonder if he knew he was the last, or if he ever imagined he wouldn't be the first again. You stay until the wind shifts, and when you rise, you don't take the claw. You leave it beside the bones, not as an offering, as a witness. Because the bear doesn't need your help being remembered, but the silence does. You walk on over the ridge and into the lowlands, where trees begin to thicken and snow gives way to moss. The air is different now, heavier, final. You look back once. The basin is empty again, just mud and memory. The trail is gone. Not just the footprints, everything. No more crushed grass. No more broken branches. No claw marks on tree trunks, no whispers in the wind. You move through the forest now like a ghost retracing another ghost's steps. And still you feel him, not behind you, not ahead of you, but under you. In the shape of the land. In the bend of the river that curves wide as his stride. In the stillness of birds that don't sing here, like they know. The forest opens into a marshy flat where mist hugs the ground in a low silver carpet. And in that mist shapes, not solid ones, not dangerous, but tall, slightly hunched, fading before you can name them. You blink, they vanish. This is where stories begin. And more dangerously, where they stay. Because he didn't just die, he got remembered. Not clearly, not accurately, but intensely. You step around a fallen log. Something glints from beneath the moss, a shard of bone polished and carved. A totem. Not recent, not ancient either. Probably passed down for generations before being left here. The figure is crude but unmistakable, long arms, upright body head, tilted like it's listening. Not a bear, not a man. An echo. You pocket it without meaning to. Just instinct. Then immediately feel guilty and place it back. You sit for a moment and let your mind drift. Because you're not the first person to wander these woods looking for something too old to still be here. The difference is you found it. Or it found you. Odd fact. Modern North American folklore is littered with stories of upright forest creatures. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, skunk, ape, wendigo. But their shapes shift across cultures. Some are gentle giants, others are predators, some are spirits, others missing links. But they all have one thing in common. They walk on 2 feet, and they leave just enough behind to make you question your certainty. Historians still debate whether these legends evolved from collective memory of real animals' megafauna like Arctodus, simus, or whether they're just myth sewn together from fear and campfire smoke. But it's awfully convenient, isn't it, that the silhouette keeps showing up. You pass a tree with old marks carved deep into the bark. Not claw marks this time, but symbols. Human. A line of them spiraling upward. You can't read them, but you don't need to. You already know what they say. You reach a clearing and stop. In the center, someone or something has arranged stones in a rough spiral, ending in a pile of sticks and fur. On top of it, a bone. Clean, placed, not dropped, upright. You don't step closer, you just observe. This is a monument, maybe old, maybe very new, maybe not meant for you at all, maybe meant for him. You remember something in certain Inuit stories. There's talk of a giant bear that walked the ice in search of silence. Not prey, not mates, just quiet. When he found it, he laid down and didn't rise. They say the wind carries his breath even now. On cold nights, you can hear it if you sit still enough. You sit, you listen, you hear nothing. But that somehow is the answer. Because sometimes the thing that lingers is not the body or the bones or the tracks. It's the pause, the space where something used to be. You rise and move on deeper into a stand of pines so tall they blot out the sky. The forest darkens, the air goes thick, and then just ahead you see something. Not the bear, not this time, a person, standing alone, tall, still, wrapped in furs that hang heavy and wet. You can't see their face. You don't call out, you just watch. They turn slowly and vanish between the trees. No sound, no footprints, just gone. But the shape stays in your mind. The proportions, the posture, too tall, too calm. You walk forward, scanning the ground. No tracks. Of course not. Because that's how it works now. He's not a bear anymore. He's a pattern, an outline etched so deeply into the earth that it walks long after the bones are gone. You've walked far enough that time begins to feel optional. The land has changed no longer. Snowy, no longer bone hard, but soft with thaw and pulsing with new green. Pines give way to birches, birches to low grass, grass to stone outcrops cracked by root and water. It's quieter now, not because there are fewer sounds, but because you are quieter, lighter. As if you've been shedding weight with every step. Memory, fear the cold shape of the bear. But he is not gone. You crest a ridge just as the sky begins to pour gold across the valley. The air is warm, heavy with the smell of damp bark and wet fur. And as you stand there, silent breath held, the earth below seems to shift as if exhaling. You don't see the bear, You don't need to. This place is full of him, in the way the stone dips where he might have slept, in the flattened grass that leads nowhere but forward, in the low-hanging mist that seems to follow no wind, no rule, no shape except his. You sit on the edge of the ridge and stretch your legs out into the sun. Your body aches. Your boots are ruined. You've lost track of food, firewood, the direction you came from. But none of it matters now. You're not walking towards something anymore. You're walking with it. Odd fact. Some ancient bear populations left behind no fossil record at all. Just absence. Just places where other animals acted differently, avoided trails, took wider paths, grew jumpier over time. An ecosystem shaped not by presence but by memory of presence. An echo with muscle. Historians still debate whether early humans mythologized animals out of awe or fear. But they missed something. It wasn't just reverence, it was recognition. You watch the horizon shift. Geese rise like a ribbon from the lake below. Somewhere far off, a bison bellows, not an alarm, not in pain, just a sound, a statement. And suddenly, you wonder if the bear had survived just a few hundred years more. Would we still believe in him? Or would we have paved over his beds, hunted his shadow into corners, forced him into museums with wrong-shaped legs and the wrong kind of roar? Maybe it's better this way. That he disappeared without apology. That he left only the kind of questions that don't need answers. That he became a ghost, tall enough to wear human shoes but never quite step into them. You close your eyes, and there he is. Walking across the valley below. Slow, upright, not looking at you, not looking at anything, just moving, as he always did. Maybe he's real. Maybe he's just a projection of everything we miss, of everything that once ruled without cruelty, of power without noise. But one thing is certain. You've followed something into the woods, and you'll never come out quite the same. He is in the way you step now, longer strides, quieter feet. He is in the way you sleep now, shallower, with one ear turned toward the trees. He is in the silence you've learned to respect. Not a monster, not a myth, just the echo of something that was too big to die cleanly. And as the light fades behind the ridge, you whisper one last thing to no one in particular. Thank you for letting me walk beside you. And the trees don't answer, but they don't need to. Because somewhere behind them something stands, still, watching. Always. You stepped into a world older than memory, following a trail that didn't just belong to a bear, but to a presence that reshaped landscapes and lingered in dreams. Arctodus, simus. The extinct short-faced bear didn't simply exist. It walked upright and unafraid across a continent of giants and legends. Through snowfields and valleys, forests and firelight, its prints told a story too strange to be entirely real, yet too vivid to be forgotten. You saw where it slept, where it watched, where it ate, and where it chose not to. You found bones, some prey, some its own kind. You met early humans who spoke of it not as an animal, but as a figure too tall to ignore. And as the trail continued, it became harder to tell where the bear ended and the legend began. By the end, he wasn't just something that walked beside mammoths and saber-tooths. He was a silhouette that kept walking long after the body was gone, through myth, through story, through the quiet suspicion that something out there still remembers how to stand taller than it should. Now you carry him too, in the way you listen to silence, in the way you step into mist, in the way you sometimes feel not watched but accompanied. He's not gone. He's just walking somewhere else.